أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. Today inshallah we are going to study the Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaih fragments. However, we're going to take a step. In fact, we're going to take two steps ahead, and we're going to study some complex forms of Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaih fragments. Up till now we have studied the simple fragments, simple Muzaff Ilaih fragments where there was only one Muzaff and only one Muzaff Ilaih, but now we're going to take a step ahead and form the fragments where there are more than one Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaihs. Alright, and the second step would be to mix and match some of these fragments. Okay, I'll tell you what it means. Okay, so let's begin our lesson about the multiple Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaih fragments, or the complex Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaih fragments. Alright, so Rabbi Yasir, Wala Tu'asir, Watamin bil Khairi, Amin Ya Rabbal Alameen. Alright, now for a quick recall, I hope you have now seen that diagram, that summary diagram that I posted earlier. And according to that, let's see what we have here. We have the phrase Miftahul Ghurfati. Alright, now assuming that you don't know the meanings right now, let's see what we have here. Miftahul Ghurfati. Alright, Ghurfati. Now this thing here shows us that this word al-Ghurfati is in jar form. Alright, and what do we do? What do we know? What do we do if we see any ism in jar form? We try and locate the source. Alright, because every ism should be in rafa form. If it is not in rafa form, then we try and find out the reason. That is what Arabic grammar is all about. Okay, so there are only two reasons for an ism to be in jar form, and what are those? First of all, either it could be following a preposition, a harf jar, in which case it is called a jar majroor fragment, and the other reason is that it is a Muzaff Ilaih. Now, how do we determine if it is Muzaff Ilaih? We go back and we check what's the word behind it. If the word is light, and by light I mean no ending na sound, and if that word is without al, then that word qualifies as a Muzaff, and therefore this becomes, and not becomes, this gets, it gets even more certain that this is indeed a Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Okay, so in this phrase rather, what do we see? We see that we have an ism which is in jar form, and the word right behind it is not a harf jar, but it is an ism which is light as well as without al. Okay, so yes, this is a Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Okay, next. So that's how you determine it. Okay, now, and you should also imagine a little invisible off over here. Okay, so it is miftah of al-ghurfati. Miftah means a key. Okay, and this is room. Actually, technically it should be key of the door, but that's how we usually say it. Okay, so that's why I gave this example. Okay, so key of the room. Okay, this is what it means. This was our quick recall. Now let's study a couple of examples regarding our complex Muzaff Ilaih fragments where we have multiple Muzaff and Muzaff Ilaihs. Okay, so this is our fragment. Okay, this is our fragment. It is Miftahu Ghurfati Zaydin. Okay, once again, Miftahu Ghurfati Zaydin. First of all, Miftahu, light without al. Next word is in jar form. Alright, therefore this thing here is our Muzaff Ilaih fragment number 1. Okay, and notice how this word Ghurfati is actually not just the Muzaff Ilaih for this first fragment, but it's also the Muzaff for the second fragment, which is also Muzaff Ilaih. Alright, of course. So this word Ghurfati acts as a Muzaff Ilaih for Miftahu, which is why it is jar. Alright, And this ghurfati also acts as the Muzaff for the Muzaaf Ilaih of the word Zaidin, alright, Zaidin. And as a result of which, this word ghurfati has to be light and without al, alright. So it, and of course you can see the invisible offs over here. So key of room of Z, alright. This is how the complex Muzaaf Ilaih fragments are formed. Okay, one fragment's Muzaaf Ilaih becomes the Muzaaf of the next fragment. Okay, that's what happens. Let's see what I've written here. The word ghurfati is the Muzaaf Ilaih of the first fragment, alright, therefore majroor. Okay, as you can see, it is majroor. Okay, miftahu ghurfati. Actually, it was miftahu ghurfatin, but since it is the Muzaaf for ghurfati Zaidin, therefore it has to be light, therefore ghurfati, and it has to be without al. Okay, so that's why it's light and without al. Okay, a Muzaaf of the second fragment. And you can now translate it. Okay, I'm giving you a second. You can just pause the video and try and translating it yourself. Okay, so you see there, these are three kinds of translations according to the English rule: key of Z's room's key, or key of the room of Z. Okay, next example. Let's try one with a preposition. I'm sorry, with a pronoun. Okay, what do we have here? Kitabu Rabbina. Kitabu, light, ism without al. Next ism, jar, right? So, of course, we don't need anyone telling us that this is Muzaaf Ilaih combination, fragment. Okay, Kitabu Rabbi. And how do we translate this? Kitab of Rabb. Okay, alright, next. Rabbina. Alright, so this Rabbi is light and it's without al. So you see, this is of course our Muzaaf, and na is the jar form of pronoun. Which pronoun? Nahnu. Alright, so nahnu is the rafa pronoun, and this na here is your nasab or jar pronoun. Okay, of course you remember from your lesson 11b that the nasab and jar pronouns are identical. Okay, and then it is up to the context and some grammatical rules that we can differentiate between these two forms. Okay, and this is just one of those examples, Rabbina. Okay, so this is our first fragment, first Muzaaf Ilaih fragment, Kitabu Rabbi. Alright, and Rabbina is our second Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. Okay, I hope this is clear. What have I written here? The word Rabbi is Muzaaf Ilaih for the first fragment, therefore majroor, and it is a Muzaaf for the second fragment, therefore light and without al. Alright, and how can we translate it? Once again, just pause the video. Okay, try translating it yourself and then come back. So book of our Rabb, or our Rabb's book, or the book of the Rabb of ours. Okay, next example. This is a bit more complex, and this is the last of these complex examples. Alright, and then we're going to study some real examples. Okay, what do I say here? Let's just zoom it up a bit. Great. So we have Kitabu Muallimi Waladi Zaidin. What's happening here? First of all, start small. Kitabu Muallimi. This Muallimi gives it away. How? This is jar, alright, and if it is jar, of course the word behind it is light as well as without al. It has to be Muzaaf Ilaih fragment number 1, and that's what it is. Okay, then next word, Muallimi Waladi. Muallimi by the way means teacher. Okay, male teacher, Muallimi. Okay, Muallimi Waladi, teacher of son or boy. Okay, so once again, this is light and this is without al. Therefore, it acts as the Muzaff for this word, which is jar, as a result of which this is our Muzaff Muzaff Ilaih combo or fragment number 2. Okay, this is what we have learned up till now. The same rule simply extrapolates. Okay, so what do we have? We have this. We have waladi Zaidan. Now this waladi is the Muzaff Ilaih for the word muallimi, and it is the Muzaff for the word Zaidan. Zaidan is our Muzaff Ilaih, our final Muzaff Ilaih, and it is jar, of course. Alright, being Muzaff Ilaih, it has to be jar. And the word waladi is the Muzaff Ilaih for muallimi and Muzaff for Zaidan. Okay, so kitabu muallimi waladi Zaidan. You won't really get these kind of really long and lengthy and such complex fragments. Okay, but this is only to get the idea across, and so that even if you do get these kind of sentences, these kind of fragments during recitation or somewhere, you should be able to work it out what it is exactly. So you got that. Okay, now let's see what I have written. The word muallimi is the Muzaff Ilaih for the first fragment of the first fragment, therefore majroor, and Muzaff of the second fragment, thus light and without al. We know this. Okay, next. Similarly, the word waladi, alright, is a Muzaff Ilaih of the second fragment for muallimi, okay, and therefore majroor. And the Muzaff of the third fragment, alright, therefore light and without al. And how would you translate it? The book of Zed's son's teacher, or Zed's son's teacher's book, or book of the teacher of son of Zed. Alright, so these are 3 different ways in which you can translate it. Of course, the first one is how we usually translate it, or the second one either. Alright, so let's study some examples. Some real examples, as I said earlier. Okay, so first of all, we have Hamdu Rabbika. What do you see? An ism that is light and without al, and the next ism is jar. So this is a clear-cut Muzaff Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Hamdu Rabbi. What does it mean? Praise and gratitude of Rabb. Rabbika. Now this Rabbi, the word Rabbi, is jar, right? And it is light, and it is without al. And the next word is actually your attached pronoun, or nasab or jar pronoun, and it is actually jar pronoun. Why? Because the ism right behind it is your Muzaff. Okay, so this is a complex Muzaff Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Okay, Hamdu Rabbika, praise and gratitude of Rabb of yours, or of your Rabb. And what does this yours mean here? This is singular, and it is of course masculine. Okay, if it were feminine, it would have been Rabbiki. If it were Jama Salim, for example, or not Jama Salim, if it were Jama, alright, then it would have been Rabbikum. Okay, so you should know your pronouns really well. Alright, now we had Hamdu Rabbika. What do we do now? We simply add a harf jar, any harf jar. For example, B. B means in, with, or along with. Okay, what happens then? This becomes your jar majroor. Okay, and see how this Muzaff becomes majroor. Okay, and remember how we said that Muzaff can be of any Arab, so it can be Rafa, Nasab, or Jar. Alright, it can be anything. So Bihamdi Rabbi Ka. Same thing. Okay, so Bihamdi Rabbika. Hamd and gratitude, praise and gratitude of Rabb of yours. And then you add the meaning of be as well. So in, with, or along with the praise and gratitude of your Rabb. Alright. Alright, now we have another situation where we are going to add harf nasab to this entire combination instead of a harf jar. By the way, we have now taken the second step in the complex Muzaff Muzaff Ilaih fragments. The first one was forming the fragments where we had more than one Muzaaf and Muzaaf Ilaih. And now the second step is when we're changing the Arab of Muzaaf. All right, that's what we're doing right now. So that's how I like to call it, the mixing and matching of various Arab and combinations. Okay, so what do we have here? We have Inna Hamda Rabbika. Now, I have already given a lecture at length about Harf Nasab and why I like to call these haruf as Haruf Nasab and not by their official name, which is Harf Mushabbah bil Fi'l or Inna and its sisters. Okay, I like to call them Haruf Nasab because it gives their function away. Okay, so Inna Hamda Rabbika. The ism of inna here is the word hamd and it becomes nasab. Alright, hamda. However, since it is light and it is without al, we immediately look what's next. Is the ism right next to this Muzaaf like ism? Is it jar? Yes, it is. So this would give it away that yes, it is actually your Muzaaf and Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. Okay, so Hamda Rabbi is Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih fragment, and then we had already added Inna. So this Hamda is actually your ism of Inna, and it becomes Nasab, and Hamda Rabbi is your Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih fragment number 1. Next is your Rabbika. This, of course, is your Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih fragment number 2, and it means Rub of yours. Okay, so if we try and translate it, there's only a very little point that we need to take care of, and this is as follows. We remember from our Harf Nasab combos that right after the combo of the Harf Nasab and its ism, an auxiliary verb comes up. Okay, and what are auxiliary verbs? They are the helping verbs such as is or were, was, will, be, am, etc. Alright, so they help make sense in the sentence. So you cannot say I driving or he reading. Okay, you have to say he was reading or he is reading or he will be reading. Alright, so all these are your helping verbs or auxiliary verbs. Okay, so an appropriate auxiliary verb has to come after the harf nasab and its isms combo. Okay, now that's exactly what is going to happen here. However, since this ism, which is which is actually your ism of inna, it also has a relationship with the ism next to it. All right, therefore we are going to place that auxiliary verb after it. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. I have translated it as indeed the praise of the Rabb of yours is. Alright, so the auxiliary verb in this situation comes right at the end. Why? Because this ism forms a relationship not only with this but also the ism next to it. Okay, so we have to, of course, we always have to improvise with where we put our auxiliary verbs during translation. Okay, so indeed, the praise of your Rabb is. Okay, that's how you're gonna translate it. Okay, next we are going to add innama. Now remember what innama was. Innama is actually a combination of inna and ma. What is this ma? This is something that I also like to call a nullifying ma. What does it do? It tends to nullify the effect of inna. What is the effect of inna? It causes the ism to be in nasab form. So if you nullify this effect, what's going to happen? It's going to act as a shield and the ism is going to revert to its rafa form. Alright, so instead of inna hamda, it becomes innama hamdu, and the rest of the definition is absolutely same. However, there is a very subtle subtle stress, all right, and that's called the concept of hisr. All right, so that's what is produced, and what that is I have already explained in the lesson about the huruf and asab. All right, so that is what gets added to it. Okay, and how would you translate it? You would simply say, indeed, most definitely, this most definitely thing is what is given, this is the effect that is given by this innama. Alright, so indeed, most definitely the praise of the Rabb of yours is. Alright, this is where you're going to place is. Okay, This is what. Okay, now a couple more examples and then inshallah we'll call it a day. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the harf-jar B, and then we have ismullahi, light ism without al, and the next ism in line is jar. So this is a clear cut Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. Okay, so let's combine. Bismillahi. All right, now it is actually bi ismillahi. Okay, but since it's a bit hard, or rather it's not too easy on the tongue to say bi ismillahi, this hamza gets omitted in speaking as well as writing. Okay, so we say bismillahi. Okay, in the name of Allah or in Allah's name. Next, now we are going to improvise again. Okay, so we have bismi rabbika. Bismi with or in name, and then since this ismi, all right, it is light, it is without al, and the next ism is actually jar. So this is once again your Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Okay, so what do? You simply place an invisible of between ism and rabbi. So with name of Rabb, of yours. Okay, so by now you should be able to recognize these combinations. Okay, next example, biyadihi. B means in, all right, or with. Here it means in. As I mentioned in the prepositions lesson, each preposition means several things. Okay, but these are the common meanings that we need to be more aware of. Okay, yadun. Yadun is a hand. All right, and it is yadi. Yadi is because of so it's jar because of b. All right, so it's jar majroor fragment, and since this yadi is light and it's without al, and the next ism is your pronoun which is marfa, and it is the Muzaaf Ilaih. All right, why is it Muzaaf Ilaih? Because it is jar. Okay, so this is our jar majroor and then Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. Okay, so in his or in hand of his. All right, and why is it in the hand of his? Because the pronouns are always marfa. So if your Muzaaf Ilaih is marfa, your Muzaaf also becomes marfa. Okay, next example, Allah upon ibadi. Now it was actually ibadu, but it becomes ibadi. Why? Because it becomes majroor because of this Allah. So this is your jar majroor fragment, and then this ibadi is light and without al, and the next word is in jar form, so it is jar majroor as well as Muzaff Ilaih fragment. All right, so upon the slave of Allah. All right, slaves. Okay, all right, next example, Allah rusulihi. All right, now it is rusulihi and it is not rasulihi. Okay, so rusulin is actually your jar form of rusulun, and rusulun is the pattern for jama mukassir. Okay, and this is something that I have already explained in lesson 8e in section A. Okay, so if you want you can go back and watch it from there inshallah. Okay, so Allah rasulihi, upon the messengers of his. Okay, jar majroor fragment and then Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Next example, fi sabilillahi. What's happening here? Fi, in, way. Sabili is way. Okay, so it's fi sabilin actually, but since it is light here and it's also without alif lam or simply al, and the next ism in line is majroor, so it is jar Muzaff Ilaih, so it becomes in way of Allah. Okay, see how very systematic translations you're coming up with. Okay, next example, Laita Abdur Rahmani. Okay, Laita, one of the huruf in nasab, it means if only. Abda. Alright, so since it is harf nasab, of course it's going to cause its ism to be in nasab form, and therefore I have placed this combo, this auxiliary verb combo over here. Okay, so Laita Abda, slave. Okay, if only the slave. But since this is light, this abda, word abda is light and it is without al, and the next word is in jar form, it is also the muzaff of Rahmani. Okay, so Muzaaf Muzaff Ilaih fragment. Therefore, it gets translated as if only a Rahman's slave were. Now, this is singular, but in English, when you write sentences with if only, you write were and not was. Okay, so that's why I've written were here. If only a Rahman's slave were, or if only the slave of a Rahman were. Okay, all right, last two examples. All right, remember how I said yadun is one hand, and its musanna would be yadani, and this thing here yada is actually alluding to it being light form of yadani. Okay, so the noon has been checked out because you need to make the ism light, you need to make the muzaf light. All right, so it is actually two hands. Okay, the noon has been checked out, yadani. All right, what's next? Abi. Now this is actually the jar form of the word abu. All right, so it becomes abi in jar form. So this is Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. Yada abi, both hands of father. Lahabin. Now once again, this is actually your complex Muzaaf Ilaih, Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih. So let's zoom it a bit. Okay. Both hands of father of flame or dust. This thing here is something that I discussed in the previous lesson. Okay, father of flame or dust. Okay, so that's what. Finally, Maliki Yawmiddin. Okay, now you must be wondering, why is this word Maliki in jar form? This is something that inshallah we are going to discuss in the next lesson, which would be about adjectives. All right, so that's when we are going to understand why this word is in Maliki, is in jar form, and it's not in Rafa form. All right, till then we are simply going to take it as it is. Okay, we're not going to ponder much over this fact. We're only going to study this thing alone. So Maliki Yaumi. Now this word Maliki is light and without al, right? Forget that it is in jar form or why it is in jar form right now. We are going to discuss it in the next lesson. And the next ism is majrur. So a clear cut Muzaaf Muzaaf Ilaih fragment. So owner of day. Now keep on reading, and what do you see? You see a majrur ism, which is also maraf bilam, therefore marfa. So what do you translate it as? Actually, you see that this yaumi is also light and without al. Okay, so once again, maliki yaumi, muzaf muzaf ilaih number 1, yaumiddini, muzaf muzaf ilaih number 2. Okay, so how would you translate it? Owner of day of judgment. All right, so these were your examples. Some of them, actually I think all of them were from the Quran Pak, and with the exception of one. All right, and of course these situations were only to recall what you have done already and to understand the concept of mixing and matching the various Arab. All right, so well, we're done with our Muzaff Ilaih fragments, alhamdulillah. And in the next lesson, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start the adjectives, and that's pretty easy. In fact, it's just one thing that you need to take care of, and then you'll be off making your own adjectival clauses, inshallah. Okay, so till that time, if you haven't yet practiced your declensions, your rafana subject forms, or your plurals and all these things, your suffixes, then I would really urge you to do that, because tomorrow inshallah we're going to learn the Masuf and Sifa. All right, till that time, barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al Hakim. Allah Hafiz.